She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her. She's a Mona Lisa.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kiana and today I have a cowl neck tutorial for you. Anyways, I asked you guys what tutorial you wanted to see next, and by far the most requested was a cowl neck top. And so even though this was the most requested tutorial, I wasn't going to actually do it just because there are a lot of cowl neck tutorials already out there and I didn't want to, be repetitive. But you guys kept requesting it, so here I am, I'm doing it. So I watched a bunch of cowl neck tutorials that were already out there, and actually nobody did it the way that I would do it, which doesn't mean I'm wrong, they're wrong. There are a lot of ways, to get a cowl neck. It's like sewing is like problem solving, there's a bunch of different ways to get to a solution. So I just wanted to show you guys how I got to my cowl neck. And then also something I noticed is that no one was really explaining all the technical details behind a cowl neck top. Like the fact that you need to drape a cowl neck top on the bias. What is the bias? What does the bias do to the drapeability? How should the grain lines be on the front and the back of the garment? Should you cut a bias cut garment on the fold? The answer is no. So throughout this video, I'm really going to be throwing a bunch of tips and tricks on how to sew bias cut things and cowl neck things. Also for my cowl, I really like when cowls have this kind of like halter neck, just because the drape of the cowl becomes a lot deeper. Okay, let me get up. Okay, my pet peeve is when like cowls will like stand straight up like this, and it's just, you see them on Nasty Gal and like Shein, and they look like this, and it is horrifying. You can also do a cowl with the straps going straight over like normal. It's just the cowl will not be as pronounced, which is still pretty. It's a cute look. I just really like that deep like U shape. If you want to do regular straps, so instead of cutting out the length of these two strips, cut out two strips that are 18.5 inches long and then just attach them like normal. Oh my god, also, I'm monetized now. Me? Stop. Thank you guys so much. I'm so appreciative of everyone who subscribed to me and who has been watching my videos. I'm so excited to continue growing my YouTube channel. I'm literally so excited about making a couple bucks because, I'm such a small YouTuber. I'm not gonna really make that much money. But anything counts, especially as an unemployed lady, which also brings me to the next topic. The fact that I have made a pattern for this top. This top right here, I made a pattern in size 0 to 12 US sizing, and it is available to you on my Etsy right now for $6. $6. Quite cheap, especially considering the fact that it took me over 30 hours to make this pattern. Yep. I'm gonna give you the knowledge how to drape and, cut this pattern on your own. To a certain extent. So if you don't want to buy the pattern and you are a fashionista and you feel confident in your abilities after I teach you how to drape this to, pattern it yourself, then go ahead. I'm also going to teach you how to sew it after you do that. If you're not confident, maybe you just don't want to go through all the hassle, because let me tell you, it is a hassle to drape and pattern things when you're making clothes. It's a lot of work. So if you don't want to deal with that, I have a pattern for you. It is going to be the first link in the description. Also, if you have any questions about any of the equipment or the materials I'm using while I'm sewing, I will have links to like my sewing machine, my scissors, my pins, everything like that in the description. But if it's not in the description and you really want to know what I'm using, shoot me a text. Not a text, you don't have my number. Write a comment and ask me what I'm using and I will get back to you. Anyways, as always, please subscribe, like, comment, let me know if you have any questions, any requests for the future. But other than that, let's just get into the video and learn how to make this cute cowl neck. Okay, first off, we need to talk about what the bias is. What is the bias? So it's just a fancy word for saying that your clothing that you're cutting out will be cut out on the diagonal. So this is non-stretch fabric. But when I pull it across the diagonal, you can see that it stretches both horizontally and vertically. So if you put your garment on the bias and cut it out like that, you will transform your non-stretch fabric into a stretch fabric. As you can see, when I put it on the regular lengthwise grain, like so, just holding it regular up and down, and I try to make a cowl neck, it makes the ugliest cowl neck ever. It doesn't drape nicely. But when I hold it on the diagonal and then I try to make that same shape, that same cowl neck, it folds into a beautiful cowl. It drapes much better. So that's why you want to drape things on the bias when you're doing cowls. So now I'm going to teach you how to drape something like a cowl on the bias. So I have this piece of fabric. It's like 30 inches by 30 inches. A square is crucial. And then I folded it in half and pressed it to create a line diagonally down that piece. And that diagonal line is the bias, as you know, because the bias is the diagonal. So then I'm just going to turn that piece 45 degrees, and I'm going to drape it with that diagonal line we created running down the center front of our dress form. I folded that corner down, and that fold line is going to become the neckline of our cowl neck. So I'm holding that fold line and just kind of positioning it on my dress form, figuring out where I want my neckline to be, how big of a cowl I want, how deep I want that U shape to go. And then I'm just gonna be playing around with it, taking it off the dress form, putting it back on, just playing around with it, figuring out what I like. If you are draping in a muslin, find the lightest weight muslin that you can. My muslin is a medium to heavyweight. It doesn't really work well for this, but this is all I had, so I'm working with what I got, but you want to use the lightest weight muslin that you can. And then after that, just pin, mark, and pattern as normal. The patterns I'm using are the ones I created from my Etsy. It comes in 4 printable sizes: letter size, which is this, A4 size, A0, and also 36 by 48 if you don't want to print it out on your home sewing machine and you want to use like pdfplotting.com and print it out on a large format for cheap. But I just printed mine out on letter size on my home printer. I used cardstock because it's more stable and I like when my pattern pieces are stable. So after you print them out, you just line them all up. The corner of each piece of paper has like a symbol to let you know where to match the pieces of paper, so it's really easy. So line them all up, tape them all. I'm using just clear tape. And after that, find your size and then cut her out. Real easy. My Etsy pattern download also comes with a full instructional pamphlet that gives you information on how to choose your size. It also includes the final measurements of the garment. It includes printing layouts, suggested cutting layouts, and step-by-step written and drawn instructions to help you understand how to construct this garment. Also, I'm choosing to cut out and construct a US size 2. Notice how the green lines on the front and the back of the pattern pieces are going in opposite directions. That's because if you cut them out on the same bias, then your shirt can actually start twisting on itself. I'm sure we've all had a shirt that kind of does that. So to counteract that, you cut them out on the opposite grain lines, the opposite biases. Now I'm ready to cut out my pattern pieces, so I've just laid them all down on my fabric and lined up my grain lines parallel to the selvage. Also, as you can see, I'm not cutting out any of my pieces on the fold, which you normally would cut, a regular front that has no seam lines on it out on the center front fold, but I'm choosing not to do that for bias cut garments. And that's because if you fold your fabric and pull it in any kind of weird way, you can have that same problem again of the garment twisting in on itself, and cutting out the full piece flat like this helps to resolve that issue. And I'm actually not going to cut out my pattern pieces right now because this is not actually my final pattern. So I'm going to go back to my software, tweak this pattern a bunch more before I finalize it, and I'm going to come back to you with garments cut from the final pattern. So, if you want to see the final pattern, go to my Etsy, check it out, and buy it. Oh well. Okay, now on to the actual sewing. So line up your side seams on your front and back bodice and then pin those up. Also do the same thing for your facing. And then another quick bias tip, and also just sewing in general, when you're sewing something with like multiple seams on it, you always want to sew in the same direction. So I have my pins all pointing up, so when I insert it into the sewing machine from the left, I can easily pull out the pins and continue sewing. So you always want to sew in the same direction. So I'm going to sew both side seams from the top to the bottom. So if I sewed one from the top to the bottom and the other from the bottom to the top, you could end up with a skewed garment. After you have everything pinned, go ahead and sew up those side seams and then also serge those side seams to finish the seam allowance. Then I'm taking my iron, pressing the seam allowances to the back, and you know what? I want to say something controversial right now. I don't think you have to serge the side seams. You could, obviously you could zigzag stitch to like kind of fake that serge if you want it to be finished nicely. But since our garment is cut out on the bias, it's not really gonna ravel that much because you can't like pull out those threads because those threads are going diagonally. So if you didn't want to finish your, your seam allowances? I don't think you would have to, honestly. It's just a matter of it looking good on the inside, but you know, it's not really gonna ravel, so you do you, girl. I recommend you serge it. If you don't serge it, I recommend you zigzag it. But if you don't zigzag it, you know, I'm not mad at you. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the straps. So fold them both right sides together the long way, and then sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. The longer strap is for the back, the shorter is for the front. And then I'm using the safety pin method to just turn that inside out, or I guess right side out, and then I'm just going to give it a nice press with my iron to make it all beautiful. Now we're going to attach the facing to the bodice. So turn the bodice right side out and the facing inside out. So when you put them on top of each other or around each other, they're going to be facing right sides together. Then I'm going to pin all the way around the neckline to line those up and get them ready for sewing, like so. And now this is where we are going to insert our straps. So if you're gonna do the straps like me to get that halter neck look, I'm first going to start with the front strap, which is the shorter strap. So turn your garment around to the front and insert those straps into the little points at the neckline. And when you insert them, they should be going at a 45-degree angle. It shouldn't be going vertically, it shouldn't be going horizontally, it should be going straight to that point at a 45-degree angle. After I pin that in, you can see it in there, I'm just gonna go ahead and stitch just that top neckline so that it doesn't move around while I'm trying to insert the back strap. Figure out how far from the side seams your back strap should be pinned. I wrote it in the instructions of my pattern. So for me, it's gonna be 4 inches from the side seam. So I'm pinning one of those straps, well, one of the ends of the back strap to that point between the facing and the bodice. And then this is where it gets tricky, so stay with me here. Keep that strap flat, hold it flat, and flip the shirt the other way around. So you're working from front up now. Okay, keep that back strap nice and flat as you're folding it around your garment. Then loop it through the front strap like so, and it should have flipped once when you loop it through. You see how it flipped? And then you're gonna keep it flat again. Don't let it flip anymore. Turn your shirt over and then insert that back strap where it should be between the facing and the bodice, and then pin it up. You might have to watch that part a couple of times so you understand what I did, but once you pin it up, you can just sew around the entire neckline and then serge around the neckline. If you want to do regular straps, you don't want the halter design, just cut 2 straps out about like 18.5 inches each. I mean, it will be different for everyone. And then sew them like normal straps if you don't want this funky design. Now I'm showing you that you should finish off the hem of the facing somehow. I'm choosing to serge mine. You could zigzag stitch yours, or you could truly do nothing because it's a free world, and you know what? That would be okay. Now the shirt is inside out. I pulled the facing away from the bodice to expose that neckline seam allowance, and I'm pressing the seam allowance towards the facing away from the bodice to prep it for understitching. Now I'm just clipping along the armholes so when I turn the facing in, it will lay flat. So for understitching, I have the facing on the right, I have the bodice on the left, and I'm making sure the seam allowance is pointed towards the facing. And then I'm going to stitch the facing down to the seam allowance to keep it from rolling out and being exposed while you're wearing the garment. So I lengthen my stitch a little bit, and then I'm just sewing really close, like 1/8 to 1/4 inch away from that neckline seam, and that is how you understitch. You won't be able to understitch in one continuous loop around the entire neckline, and that's because when you get to the front strap, because it's sewn in a point, it won't allow you to flip that fabric out and continue understitching. So you're gonna have to backstitch, take out your fabric or take out your garment, and then skip that gap of that front strap and then continue understitching around the back neckline. Now I'm turning the hem under twice at 1/4 inch each time and hemming. Last step, we are going to tack the facing to the side seam of the bodice on the inside, and this again is going to further prevent the facing from rolling out like that and being exposed while you're wearing the garment. So I'm just taking a few stitches between the facing and the side seam of the actual bodice, and then tying that off, doing it to both sides, and you are finished. Anyway, so there you go. You have a cowl neck. You're all done. She's cute. And she really does not take a long time to make. It's an easy pattern and it's easy to sew and understand. So it's a great beginner project. And it's just also a great top to have if you want something cute to wear. Like I said before, most of the sewing equipment that I use in this video will be in the description, but let me know if you have any other questions about sewing equipment, about sewing, about construction, any of that. Let me know if you have any more requests for the future. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching my video. Bye.